Hello, this is Miss Cliffner with another lesson on dividing fractions. And today we're not going to be drawing pictures, but of course you can still draw pictures if that helps. We're going to learn the algorithm, right? An algorithm is just a fancy word for the steps that you use to solve a problem. And the reason that we haven't learned the algorithm up until now is because I want you to understand why the whole keep, change, flip works. So here we go. Let's get into, this is the pattern that we saw from an activity that we did where we looked at taking a three, right? 1, 2, 3 whole, let's say candy bars, and we're dividing it by 2/3. Means we're trying to figure out how many groups of 2/3 fit inside of 3. So we took and we cut each of these pieces into 3 because the denominator is a 3, right? So if we're trying to count how many thirds there are, we needed to cut them into 3 pieces each. And then I highlighted groups of 2 because the numerator is 2. So we counted 2 at a time. And look, there was 1 left over. So I had 4 groups and I need 2 pieces to make a group, but I only had 1 out of 2, which is a half. So that's why we had 4.5 groups of 2/3 in 3. So here's what it turns out that we're doing. When you divide by a fraction, you're multiplying by the denominator and you're dividing by the numerator, right? So we multiplied 3 times 3. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces altogether, and then we divided by 2. So what that looks like in reality is this. We took the 3 and we divided by 2/3, but dividing by 2/3 is the same as multiplying by 3 and then dividing by 2. So basically, we are multiplying by the piece that we're trying to fit inside when it gets turned upside down. Okay, so this is not in your notes. Here's what I want you to notice. I'm giving you another example. If you had 8 and you were trying to figure out how many 2/5 are in 8, you would multiply by 5 and then you would divide by 2. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, what if I know there's order of operations and you usually go from left to right, but what if I just say, take the 5 divided by 2 and write it as a fraction? This means, right? This means 5 divided by 2. And then I could do, write this as a fraction, and then I can just put the 8 over 1, and you remember how to multiply fractions where you multiply across, multiply across. Okay, so now I want you to know that two numbers whose product is 1, if you multiply the two numbers together, those two numbers are called reciprocals. I-P-R-O-C-A-L, and Miss Cliffner calls these numbers reflipricals. So you will hear me say the word refliprical. I'm trying to get you to picture the fractions turning upside down. So you notice that when you multiply these two numbers together, you get 1, because the top would be 15, the bottom would be 15, and 15 divided by 15 is just 1. In this one, if I multiply 9/5 times 5/9, I get 45 over 45, which is just a giant 1. This is also a giant 1. Now the 2 is tricky. I have to think about it over 1 to find the refliprical, which is 1/2. So if ever you have a whole number, remember to put it over 1 and then you flip it. Okay, so here we go. Write the reciprocals of the numbers. This is an example. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. The reciprocal of 5, if I put it over 1, is 1/5. Now I have 2 Oyos. I want you to find the reciprocals of those numbers. Pause the video and then check your work. Oh, this is so easy. That's 3/7. So I'm going to put this over 1. The reciprocal is 1/10. Okay, so now we're going to do some math with it. The key idea is when you divide fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. And we kind of figured that out, right, when we were doing the drawing the pictures. Okay, so there is a song to help you remember, and it's linked in Canvas. Steps for dividing fractions. You're going to fill in the blank spaces in your notes. The first thing you do is you notice that the dividend, the first number, stays the same. You don't flip it. That's the dividend. That's the number that you're starting with. Then you find the reciprocal of the divisor. That's the number after the division sign. Then you multiply across, multiply across. You simplify if necessary, right? Remember that improper fractions should always be changed to mixed numbers. Improper fractions should be simplified by dividing by the GCF. You need to do those two things to simplify. Okay, let's do a couple examples. I'm going to train my brain. I'm going to circle this and I'm going to write flip. That's the one I flipped. Remember, we multiplied by the denominator and divided by the numerator. So I'm just going to flip it. 2/7 times, oops, I almost made that mistake. I didn't flip it. 3/1. When I multiply across, I get 2 times 3/7 times 1, and that equals 6/7. Easy, right? Okay, here's the next one. 2/5 times, I'm flipping this fraction, 10/3 equals 2 times 10/5 times 3. I want to do that thing where I simplify before I multiply. I'm looking at the 5 and 10, and they're both divisible by 5, right? So use your factor chart. Divisible by 5, divisible by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. When I multiply across, I have 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. Uh-oh, improper fraction. How many times does 3 go into 4? It goes 1 time. I have 1 left over, so it's 1 1/3. Okay, now I have some Oyos for you to try. There we go. Pause the video. I'll show you the answers. I'm going to do this. Flip. Flip. 3/8 times 4/1 is 3 times 4/8 times 1. I'm going to divide by the GCF. 4 and 8 are both divisible by 4. It's hard to squeeze in there. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. I get 3 times 1. 2 times 1. That equals 1 1/2, right? You have to get really good at turning an improper fraction back into a mixed number. 3/2 is the same as 1 1/2. Okay, last one. 3/8 times 4/1. Wait, what? I put the same one. Okay, sorry about that. The work that I did was actually number 4, so I'm going to show you what number 3 actually is in my notes. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Here's what number 3 is from the notes. 1/2 divided by 1/8. I'm circling that. I'm going to flip it. So I have 1/2 times 8/1. Let's say you just multiply across. I get 1 times 8/2 times 1. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. That's the answer. It's 4. All right, good luck.